All right. Good morning. It is Monday. And of course, I'm loving this new text stream. Drop in the chat. Let me know if you like this as well. If you like this setup, if it's easy to get into, if the audio is good, if the video is good. Let me know your thoughts on in the chat. Yay, I'm awesome. I'm so excited to be here. Happy Monday, everyone. Monday mindset is where we are. I'm having this is not a tech issue. Hey, Pam, good to see you here. This is not a tech issue. This may be a user issue. There's Kayla. Kayla, I texted the invite to you. Check your phone, see if it's there. I did get your message that let me help you. Let me explain what's happening here. We are making some changes inside the circle, and so one of those changes is we're going to be using this new live stream setup. The software is a little bit easier to use. It's a little bit less wonky and clunky. So the issues that we're facing this morning are user issues. I'm not sure that I sent Kayla the correct link to join us. So thought it was a little bit fun to add some music this morning. Let me know if you like that. If you were here a little bit early, you probably got to see the splash screen and let that go. Hey, so yeah, see the splash screen and then get some music. We got some music going. We've got some good stuff happening this morning. There comes Kayla. There she is. Woohoo! Thanks so much, Kayla. Sorry about the link. I apparently did not send the right link, so I apologize for that.
Okay.
I'll get better.
Now we know.
I will get better.
There's a difference between a viewing link and a studio link.
Right, exactly. So we got that squared away. So I did a little something fun this morning. I was able to use a splash screen with our quote on it and play some music.
I saw that
before. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cute.
Fun. Yeah,
so very that was kind of legit.
Right, I know. Like we almost know what we're doing.
Just saying, no, right? If only we could get everybody in the studio.
Right, exactly. So
next week.
There's always next week. That's right. So remind me what our quote is. I really like it this week. I really like this a lot. So remind me what it is and kind of kick us off on, by the way, baby's gorgeous. I'm glad that he's a happy boy this morning.
Well, at the moment, we'll see. He was supposed to nap for longer, so.
Well, that's all right.
That's why we're on the ball. I hope I don't make anybody seasick.
Right. That's totally okay. So kick us off. Tell us what we're talking about this morning.
Yeah, so today's Mindset Monday quote is another one inspired by my parenting journey. And it is author unknown, but it's one that you hear a lot in the parenting community. And it's, they're not giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time. So, of course, this falls under our pillar of empathy. And it's really easy to see how this is applicable, especially with babies. It can, I will tell you firsthand, it can get very frustrating when they're screaming and they won't stop and you've done all of the things and they're still just screaming at you, but they're not screaming at you and it's not personal and they're not trying to give you a hard time. They're having a hard time. And for me, that mental shift has been huge. And it makes such a difference in not feeling so frustrated and instead, having that empathy, like feeling, oh, I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry. You're so tired. Here, let me hold you a little bit as opposed to, oh, why are you screaming at me?
Right. I love this because it's hard to remember that sometimes.
Yeah.
In the moment.
But I do feel like even though it's meant towards babies and toddlers mostly, I really feel like it's applicable across the lifespan because one thing that I have found, we talk so much here in Mindset Monday about having intention and bringing awareness to some of our, innate drive, what are the instincts and like the fight or flight response and all of these things. But in my personal experience, most adults don't have attention and awareness to those things. Most adults are not living with intention and thinking about their mindset and these kind of things. Most adults are kind of going through life in more of a reactive state. So, and then even for those who have done mindset work, we'll just call it, when you're faced with a health crisis, you know, and especially when it can be complicated with loss of income. Income is tight for everybody right now. You know, even the person who does have, you know, if this happens to you or me with all of our awareness to mindset, we are still not going to be in our best mindset. We are not going to be as in control of our emotions and regulating our responses. We most likely will slip back into that very primal state of fight or flight and reactivity.
Oh my gosh.
So I feel like I feel intuitively that this is a nice reminder when we are working with our clients, especially those who are going through a new life-altering diagnosis or some other crisis, that maybe when their behavior isn't the best and or they're lashing out, it's probably not personal. It's probably not that they're giving you a hard time, but that they're having a hard time.
I love this. I think that that is true so much of the time. So much. And if we can remember that, and it's also interesting too, because I think there's an additional layer to this. Like, I need to remember that about me. Right? So I need to understand it about others. And like you said, apply that empathy and understand that it's not personal towards me. But I also need to understand in moments when I'm lashing out verbally, emotionally, you know, those types of things. I need to remember that it's probably not the other person, that it's probably me. And I need to think about that as well. And try not to take that out on the people around me. And that can be challenging as well. Right? I mean, when I'm having a hard time, I usually give a hard time. And that's not always, there's just lots of this that I'm thinking about. Wow. So I had a rough weekend. I had a really rough weekend. Yeah, I was traveling.
Was it in the air?
Hey, you know what? Maybe it was. Maybe it was in the air. Maybe
it was the moon. It was a full moon, wasn't it?
Ooh, we know what happens when there's a full moon. So that if there was there really a full moon this weekend?
I don't know specifically this weekend, but it was recently.
Okay, so maybe we're experiencing some layovers from that. This is me having a hard time and giving, like, you know, inadvertently giving that hard time to others. Saturday I was traveling from Tennessee back here to Michigan, and I had car trouble. And it was stressful. Everything's fine, right? Like, it's not the end of the world. It's fine. However, I may have had a phone call or two during that period of time where I may not have been as nice as I could have been, just because I was having such a hard time. In fact, there was a phone call at one point that I literally answered the phone and I was like, I cannot talk right now. And I was thinking, why did you answer the phone? Like, you didn't have to answer the phone just to be mean and say, I don't have time for you right now. So I'm thinking today's Monday, and this is this great quote, right? So one of my commitments and my actions from this one is going to be that I'm going to follow up on some of those with some of those folks in my life that I may not have been super sensitive and caring and all of the things with this weekend, because I was giving a hard time because I was having a hard time. I'm going to do better on that one. Anyway, yeah, so it's easier, I think, for me, and probably as advocates, I would say maybe most of us have this, that it's a little bit easier when other people are giving me a hard time. Like I tend to kind of default to this, they're having a hard time. I think I assume that, and it's easier for me to behave as if they're having a hard time and giving them that empathy and that compassion. Whereas what I just explained, where it's me and I'm giving the hard time, that's more challenging for me. So I'd be interested to know about you all as advocates. Do you find it, which side of that is more challenging for you? Giving the empathy to others or being aware self, that kind of thing. Oh, great. Oh, good. We've got Octavia. Good to see you this morning. Let's see. Octavia says she's got an aging client who's a widow. She's having a hard time dealing with it all. So Octavia has been more present and empathetic with her. However, I see her daughter also having a hard time taking out on her mom. Any suggestions on how to guide the daughter? Ooh, this is great. That's a good question. I think that I'm going to do you have any suggestions there, Kayla?
I mean, it's hard to say without specifics, but first of all, any kind of behavior things, I think, need to be pointed out as they're happening, but maybe not the full discussion as they're happening. But something, kind and unjudgmental to hold a boundary in that moment is, hey, I see you're having a really hard time. I can't imagine how you're feeling. Don't tell somebody that you know how they're feeling, because that will piss them off.
Yes.
And then, I see that you're having a hard time, and that's valid. Your mom's having a hard time too. Maybe this isn't the best way to interact, or just something like that, just to bring some awareness, but not like, we don't want to be making her feel bad about it.
Right.
Otherwise, then your words won't be heard.
Yeah. So what about, like, if you were to say something along the lines of, I'm going to name the daughter just because I'm better with names. I'm going to call her Susie. Hey, Susie, I noticed that you're having a really hard time in this. Maybe you and I could have a separate conversation and help you better help mom in the situation. Would that be okay? And the reason I say that is because sometimes family members really do just need an external ear, like a safe place. And maybe just giving that to the daughter, giving her access to having a safe space with you and having a separate conversation might be helpful for her. That was the first thing that I kind of thought of, so it's in the moment, right? And it's kind of catching her in the moment. And at the same time, it's giving her an alternative. I love that.
And speaking, I always like to speak coming from a place of assuming positive before negative.
Yes.
So, like, not assuming that she's intentionally lashing out at her mom, because she probably isn't. I mean, sometimes people do, but my guess is it's more of a unintentional kind of, we're operating in this default primal mode,
right?
And mom's in the collateral.
Right. And when we think about it in these situations, both mom and daughter are both having a hard time.
Right.
So they each have their own hard time that they're going through, and then they're both also probably giving a little hard time. And so as the advocate, if we can kind of de-escalate that and have empathy for them and give them the tools that they need to kind of rein that in and realize it as well. I find it even with my own parents, right?
Again, most adults do not have awareness around these things.
So true. Great question, Octavia. I hope that was a little bit helpful in giving some suggestions on how to kind of navigate that. Good. Awesome. She says it is helpful. Oh, she did suggest, okay, Octavia, you did suggest a second meeting. Here, look, I'll just kind of show this up. She didn't, yeah. So she didn't bring up her behavior at the moment, but she did suggest that they set up a time to reset and recover. Yeah, that's perfect. I think you handled that beautifully, Octavia. I think that was great.
Yeah,
Good
or
job.
another suggestion too in the moment, especially if both parties are, seem to be getting upset and dysregulated, just objectively point that out. Hey, it feels like tensions are high here. Why don't we all take a break and then we can and get some air and then we can reconvene?
Exactly. Exactly.
Because that doesn't put blame on anybody, but it still interrupts that process.
You know, Kayla, I think that's a really important thing that you just said. It doesn't put blame on anyone. And I think that's really super important, is because so many times we are human beings and there are certain things that we do that are just human. Right? Like it's just the human nature of things. And so we have to be aware and make some conscious choices to do things differently. And just because when I have a hard time, I tend to behave poorly, maybe, right? That's kind of that human natural default. And it takes effort to be aware, to change that. But it's not a blame necessarily, right? Like shaming and blaming.
Right. And taking and creating that separation between the, like my husband says all the time, hate the action, not the person.
Yes.
So you are not the culmination of your mistakes and poor choices.
That's right. That's right.
So remembering that separation too, and bringing it back to, you were talking about like what you do in those moments. I've had lots of practice with this lately because I have an 11-week-old who doesn't sleep. And I'm tired and I get cranky. But I've gotten very good at like catching myself and not going, obviously I still say some things that I wish I hadn't, but I don't get nearly as far down the rabbit hole as I used to. And I can kind of stop that cycle and take a step back. And I just always come back with apology. You know what? I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time right now. I did this with my son, my 4-year-old son the other day, because the baby was screaming and screaming and screaming. And then he just kept, mama, 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 mama. And I was like, I can't. I said, honey. And I told him, I said, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need you to go play quietly for a few minutes. I said, you can go play with your trains, you can go outside, you can go to your room, but I need some quiet. And I turned down the lights because I was just getting very overstimulated. And he didn't, which, I mean, he's 4. So he kept coming up and he's like talking and I lost it. I started yelling and I was like, I need you to go. And then of course he's crying. And then of course, then he finally goes. And I'm like,
right.
So he's crying and then the baby's crying harder. And then I didn't cry.
Are you crying yet? I was going to say, are you crying yet? Because I know that's on the next, like the next.
That was last week.
I'm crying too. Yeah.
That was last week. But anyways, I got myself under control. And then I came back to him immediately and I apologized. I was like, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I'm not angry with you. I was feeling very overwhelmed. And I said, I could feel it in myself that I was like, it's like when you pour water in a cup, only so much water can fit in the cup. And then if you keep pouring, it will overflow. I said, so mama's cup was full and you were pouring water. And that is why I needed you to stop. And he actually, it seems like he understood that analogy.
Nice.
It's not your fault. I'm not mad at you, but this is a situation that happened and I'm sorry. I'm going to try harder. I said, also, though, when I tell you that I need you to give me some space and to play quietly, I need you to listen to that. That's a boundary.
Right. Practice those things, right? That's, yeah.
So that was the long story to say that when I mess this up, which I do frequently nowadays, I make sure I always come back immediately with that apology, that recognition from the action. And again, that's not that's not in a way as like to claim blame, but really you're acknowledging
Right.
the hurt that you did to the other person, even though it was unintentional.
Which I think is so powerful in keeping relationships healthy, is, cleaning up that error, right? And right, Octavia says, I know, right? It's kind of cool, isn't it, Octavia? So it's really interesting. Octavia gives you props and says, what a great way to teach your son to recognize his emotions and how to express them. I was just thinking the exact same thing. I was like, so my son is grown, but I look back and I'm like, oh, wow. If I had done better at doing that, that's an amazing gift that you give your kids, is the demonstration of, one, we are human and we have these emotions, and two, this is how we manage them in appropriate ways, which is a whole nother concept of conversation. But
Yes,
and I think this is,
you're right. Yeah. He impresses me the way he handles situations sometimes. I look at him and I'm like, damn, I didn't learn that till I was 24, not 4.
Yeah, if you hang out with us for a while, you get to hear these stories. Kayla brings them to us and we get to hear them. I'm thinking about some earlier Mindset Mondays. There was a birthday party or something that you all went to, and I can't actually remember what the comment was, but you shared it on Mindset Monday about how well he managed his emotions during that birthday party with that kid. So that was really cool. So today we're kind of talking about this whole idea of empathy towards others who are having a hard time. And as advocates, we see this a lot. Most of our clients come to us when they're having a hard time, because if they weren't having a hard time, they probably wouldn't be looking for us.
Right. And so, that's why, just to put a pin in that, that's why I keep bringing the topic up, because to me, it does need to stay so front of mind that, and I say the same thing when I work in the ER. I'm like, and maybe that's why I say it's so important, because you were like, oh, advocates tend to be really good at this. I work with, most of my career with jaded ER staff who just deal with the worst of the worst every day. And you get your empathy stomped out pretty quickly if you're not intentional at keeping it front of mind there. But I literally, probably every shift that I work, I remind somebody, I'm like, this person's having the worst day of their life. Like, literally, whenever a nurse or a doctor, or, well, usually that's most of my interactions, is complaining about a patient, I'm like, they are having the worst day of their life. I was like, I'm sure they are in a bad mood. Yeah. Right. However, when it's your job and you do work in an ER and everybody is treating you like that because everybody that you deal with is having the worst day of their life, it does get exhausting. Right. That's exactly why those staff tend to get so jaded and flat. And anyways, but I always bring that sunshine. So I think this trend of empathy that I've been bringing up lately is probably partly a byproduct of that.
Right. And that's okay. There, I just put the quote on the screen so that others can see what our quote is for this morning's Mindset Monday. They're not giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time. I would love to hear all others' experiences with this. And like I said earlier, which side of this, because I love what you said, Kayla, you're in a much more fast-paced environment where, especially like ER is a whole world in and of itself. And so that world, I can certainly see what you're saying and appreciate the fact that empathy can get stomped on pretty regularly in that environment. That makes perfect sense to me. And making sure that you have this idea front and center and regular conversations around it. So I'd be really interested to hear other advocates, what your experience is with this, how you manage it, which side. Kayla and I are on two different waves of this same thing, where I find it much easier to give the empathy to others and much more challenging to be aware of my own influence. And so I'd be interested to hear others, like which side of the empathy, what do you want to call that, scale? You know, do you spectrum? Do you find yourself most challenged with giving the empathy or being aware of your own tendencies to have a hard time and take it out on others? So yeah, that's my big question. What's your big question here this morning, Kayla, as we get close to our 30 minutes?
I would love to hear some stories of people, you know, maybe with some reflection that you can see now that, oh, in that instance, they were having a hard time. Like what's a scenario that pops to mind, you know, now that you have this perspective to look through, this lens?
This is great. This is good stuff. Good stuff, good stuff. And just so you know, I will be posting the video inside of the group, and we will also have conversation starters through the week to kind of help us keep this empathy. They're not giving us a hard time, they're having a hard time, to help us keep that top of mind this week. But before we go, I did want to remember that we had some actions that we kind of committed to this week. And the little things, like what's the one little thing that we committed to doing last week? Did we get it done? And so for me, I was going to invite one person to my workshops every day for the whole week, and I did get it done. And actually, on a couple of days, I got more than one invited. So I feel really good about that. I don't remember what some of the others were, but if you made that commitment, drop in the chat, let us know. Did you get that done? Did you get that one thing done last week? Kayla, what was your one thing? Do you remember?
My focus was on my core strength that I need to rebuild after having this gigantic baby in my belly. And I did not meet that goal every day.
Did you meet it some of the days?
I did. So that is more than 0 days, which was the previous week.
And it's all about progress.
We just keep going forward. Exactly.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I love it. I love it. I love it. Awesome. All right. So we're going to, like, this week inside the community, we're going to share our experiences around maybe a reflection of a time when you can look back and say, oh, they weren't giving me a hard time, they were having a hard time. And then the other thing you can share with us in the community is around which side of this is more challenging for you, giving the empathy to others or understanding that you might need some empathy and on your self-awareness and not taking things out on others when you're having a hard time, because that's my stuff.
And and I'd also love to challenge you this week to keep this in mind and see, as you're going through your week, if you can find a situation in which this is applicable and see how that helps your frame of mind at that point.
I love it. All right, so there's the quote. We're going to be watching for you inside the community. Tell us all about it. This looks like it's a really good timing. It looks like baby's getting a little bit restless. So we're done, guy. Tell him we're all done. We're all done. You guys go have a great week. We'll see you next week right here. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.